Welcome everyone to our first debate, and it is about whether a prisoner has the right to vote or no. We have the affirmative team consisting of Muhammad Hagras, Heidi Al-Ghanem, and Iman Khalid. And we have the opposing team consisting of Malak Ibrahim, Rowan Al-Ghanem, and Shaza Fakhri.
A mistake or fault shouldn't take away one of your rights as a citizen in your own country. We all know that prisoners are people who have committed a crime or illegal action, and they're facing the consequences of their fault and getting what they deserve for doing so. But at the same time, remember that we're all humans and we're all meant to make mistakes and mess up sometimes. And that should be normalized as long as they get their punishment. But does that punishment include taking one of their rights to vote?
A debate of whether a prisoner should vote or not is a very controversial topic that has raged for a long time. After the presidential candidate Bernie Sanders said that prisoners have the right to vote despite their crime and how cruel they were, an editorial was published by Boston Herald that asked if citizens who have no respect for the laws of the land should have a hand in their authorship. The editorial then stated that letting prisoners vote was out of question. In my opinion, prisoners shouldn't vote. In common sense, how would a person that harmed the country and doesn't respect its laws actually have a hand in deciding its fate? A prisoner should most probably choose a president that would most likely have a criminal intentions or gave the criminal a bribe. Yes, not all felons are cruel, but however, they still misuse their freedom, and it should be dispossessed from them. Citizens can't put the fate of their children in a hand of criminals. A criminal that tried to steal one of the most expensive and historical jewels that had belonged to the royal family is not expected to give much loyalty to his country. In my opinion, prisoners shouldn't vote.
Many people feel that taking away voting rights from prisoners is some form of damage control. But if we're thinking logically, what damage is there to be made? Prisoners is always looked down upon. Everyone who's there deserves to be there, they say. I think the point of prison is being missed. It's not only for retribution and incapacitation, it's for rehab. This form of rehab is put in place so that the prisoners can get better when they're at prison. They can learn from their mistake, and they do pay for the mistakes they've made. The whole purpose is so after they finish this rehab, they can come back and they will not repeat these mistakes again. We want to leave a bright future for them, a chance to change. How are we going to give them a chance to change when they can't even have normal rights like voting? Why shouldn't they get to vote? Why shouldn't they get a say in their future? It's a time to reflect, to get better. They need to start thinking about their future so they can want to get better. It gives them hope, it gives them faith. It makes them want to get out of prison. Every voice matters, and every human needs to be able to choose their own leader.
A prisoner named Bates was interviewed when he said, "My job as a voter is to assess the best candidates for my values, my family's values, and the values of my country. I want to have a say in my own future." Bates is a prisoner among 1.5 million others currently being held in the United States prison. But how can you ask for the right to vote and assess the best candidates for your values when you don't even have values that you respect? What kind of values does a prisoner have? What kind of values would someone who's committed a crime, kidnapped, or even murdered someone have? And what kind of family were you trying to protect when you committed a federal crime that you knew you'd be arrested for and left them alone? Definitely not the opinion of someone I would trust to vote on my country's president. Bates said he wants to have a say in his own future, but he already determined his fate when he committed a federal crime. The fate of our country's future is now in the hands of people who obey its laws and respect its presidents. Those are the only ones that should have a say.
A prisoner's right to vote doesn't only affect their future, it affects the current situation they're in. inmates need better prison programs. So by choosing the leader that will help them, it will equip them with better job and life skills they're going to need later on. By having the right to vote for their government, they're going to help that come true. Every lawmaker thinks differently. Therefore, prisoners should get to choose which lawmaker is going to help them. Nobody is there to stand up for them. Who's their voice? Who speaks for them? No one. So they should get a voice on who should represent them. This could actually improve the prison system itself. Issues like prison abuse are still actively going on. Not everyone is going to stand up for these inmates. That's why they need to vote for someone who will. Some politicians are actually open to the idea of making it a regular thing to hold town halls and talk to the prisoners to see ways they can improve the prison. This could have a huge positive impact on the prison system. Prison alone is a big enough punishment. They don't need to get their voting rights taken away too. They already had their freedom taken away, and they've lost the ability to see their loved ones. Some will argue and say, why can't they just get their rights back after they're free of charges? But how are we going to expect them to know how to use them? Someone who's been deprived of their rights for so long, how are we going to expect them to use them properly? A prisoner cannot represent themselves, so they should get a say on who can speak for them and represent them. Voting isn't a privilege, it's your right as a citizen. It shouldn't be connected to punishment.
When a person commits a crime, the rights that have been given them by their government have been abused. The freedom to be given should be taken away. A poll found that 75% of Americans disagree with the argument that voting rights should not be taken away from felons under any circumstance. Any crime committed has hurt someone or the country in some way, or otherwise it wouldn't be illegal. Why would we allow a prisoner to have a say in our future if they have hurt or damaged somebody else's in any way? They want to vote and have a say on the leaders of our country, but they don't even obey or respect their laws? The government mitigates crime and felons committed by putting the people who've committed them in prison. Most of these people have committed unspeakable crimes and are obviously not sane or in their right mind, or they wouldn't be behind the cell. And you want to give them a chance to fail our system again? This idea is just a disaster waiting to happen. Even after they get out and have a fresh start, they'll most likely go back to their old habits because starting over is very hard.
Voting in elections is not a privilege. It's a right for every adult citizen. Furthermore, the idea that banning prisoners from voting is about them having consequences for their actions is misleading. They are already suffering consequences from their actions. That's why they're in prison in the first place. The law defines what your punishment should be according to the significance of the crime you committed. You can serve 5 years, 10 years, maybe the rest of your life in prison. It all depends on the crime. So for someone to come and say we should also ban prisoners from voting, I think that makes no sense. Also, when it comes to real life, statistics has proven that there is a significant number of innocent people who end up in prison for crimes they didn't commit. For example, 2011 study by the Innocence Project has found that 20,000 Americans approximately were serving prison sentences for crimes they didn't commit. By the same token, there are also people who commit crimes but do not go to prison. In some cases, they are rich and powerful, so they have the resources to hire lawyers who can get them out of trouble. In other cases, they simply don't get caught, so they also get away with their crimes. Setting aside all of that, there is actually no proven benefit from banning prisoners from voting. It is just not an effective punishment. In fact, I think it's quite the opposite. Instead of making prisoners feel they are included in society and that they are practicing their social responsibility, it makes them feel like they are eliminated. So in light of all of that, do you still think it's fair or that it is the right thing to do to prevent prisoners from voting?
Our belief in the right to vote is as strong as anyone's, but losing right is part of the felon punishment. There is an assumption, or at least an aspiration, that the right to vote would be happy providence for the moral and responsible, for the sober-minded and the thoughtful person. We don't allow people who are less than 18 years to vote. We don't allow non-citizens to participate in our democracy. So are we going to allow criminals to participate in our democracy? I don't think people in prison should have the right to vote. I don't think they would have the best interest for the community in mind. If you go to the prison, this should be part of the punishment. Prison is meant to be a punishment. A custodial sentence has always resulted in the loss of freedom and the loss of democratic rights in the duration of the prisoner's sentence. Criminals shouldn't be able to vote. We don't need their advice on what is the coming crime. They certainly should not be voting while they are in prison. If you ask yourself, do we really want those felons to vote from prison? The answer is of course not.
This was our debate and we saw a great performance by both teams. Tell us in the comments below who do you think won. And remember, debate is not about winning, it's about expressing your thoughts.